Now, the next lesson of this course has to deal with my favorite musical element, rhythm. Now, depending on who you ask, rhythm can mean many different things. If you ask a dancer what is rhythm, they will give you one answer, and if you ask a sonologist what is rhythm, they will give you a different answer. If you ask a musician what is rhythm, they probably won't know, and if you even just Google the definition of rhythm, it's not really the right answer. So, it's unfortunately, the word almost doesn't mean anything. However, fortunately, you're watching one of my videos, and I happen to know what rhythm means. Here's what you have to remember. We cannot confuse the concept of meter with rhythm, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about both. So rhythm and meter are not the same thing, and one of the reasons why the definition of rhythm is so confusing is usually when you ask people what does rhythm mean, they will usually start describing something that sounds like meter, okay? By meter, I mean time signatures. So, let's start by talking about meter, and then we will come back to rhythm. Meter is how we organize pulse, okay? So you could describe meter as an organization of repeated pulsations, okay? And they are organized in strong beats and weak beats. So let me show you an example. So I'm going to use the piano as a drum for a second. And for you musicians out there, I want you to try and figure out what time signature or meter I am tapping right here. Ready? Is this 3/4, 2/4, or 4/4 time? If you answered 4/4, you're wrong. If you answered 2/4, you're wrong. If you answered 3/4, you're also wrong. This was not a time signature. This was me being weird and smashing my hands against the piano lid. Now, let's try that again. I'm going to do something different, and I want you to listen and ask yourself, is he tapping in 4/4, 3/4, or 2/4? Let's see if this changes things. That was 4/4 time. And the difference between the first thing I did and the second thing I did was I added beat emphasis, okay? Meters all have their own beat emphasis, and different meters have different ways of emphasizing groups. But every time you see a time signature, each time signature implies its own beat emphasis. So the first one, I was just tapping. All my taps were equal. The second time, I did strong, weak, medium, weak, strong, weak, medium, weak, strong, weak, medium, weak. And that happens to be the beat emphasis for 4/4 time. Strong, weak, medium, weak. So if you're playing a piece of music in 4/4 time and you're just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 like a robot, maybe you should reconsider your career path. You need to think in your head, 1 is always the strong beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Same thing. Tell me what time signature this is. If you guess something in 3, like 3/4 time or 3/8 time, you're right. And we know that because beat 1 was the strong beat. Strong, weak, weak. Strong, weak, weak. Beat emphasis for a meter in 3 is strong, weak, weak. And of course, 2/4 would be strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. So meter is reoccurring pulses, but they have beat emphasis within them. And we, in a few minutes, are going to learn which meters have which beat emphasis. And you do have to memorize which meter has which beat emphasis in order to properly write a theory exam, and especially if you're going to do something like conduct or something ambitious like that. So that's meter. Rhythm, we can describe rhythm as the diverse activity within each pulse, okay? So we play a piece of music, and the pitch and the music and the musical gestures are organized within the meter, but the diverse activity is rhythm, and it takes place within the pulsations. And it has to be organized that way as such. And for a lot of this video, the most challenging part of this lesson is going to be learning how to organize rhythm within a meter so that it's easy for the musician to read. That's a key component of what they're trying to teach you on your level 5 RCM exam, and also of just being a music theorist, and or if you're going to be a composer, or if you're going to engrave music, knowing how notation is supposed to appear on the page so that it's easy and simple to read and it doesn't aggravate the performer trying to read it is a very important skill, and we are going to learn that today, in particular in relationship to rests. Okay, there are two types of meter. There's simple meter and compound meter. Simple meter is when the pulsations are subdivided into groups of twos, okay? There's even amounts of beats in each pulse. Compound meter is when each beat or each pulse is subdivided into groups of threes, okay? So I'm going to clap beat emphasis of 4/4 times strong, weak, medium, weak. Strong, weak. Now I'm going to speak and subdivide that into twos. I'm going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's 2 words for each pulse. I'll do it here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to clap 4 beats again, except I'm going to start speaking in threes. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the speed of my clapping hasn't changed, but my subdivision, which I'm representing by speaking for now, has changed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's simple meter, or I can do compound meter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we have simple meter and compound meter. For this course, 90% of the questions are going to be in simple meter. With one exception, we are going to be looking at the compound meter 6/8 time. Okay. We are also, aside from looking at meter, we also are going to review triplets and dotted notes. And some of you guys might know what that is, and some of you might not. A triplet is often used in compound meter when a composer wants to write a subdivision of threes on a pulse, but the meter isn't designed to represent groups of three, so they have to write triplets instead, and we're going to take a closer look at that on the whiteboard. And dotted notes we will be looking at on the whiteboard as well. A dotted note is when we want to extend a note value by half of its length. So if you write any note and put a dot right beside it, the dot represents half of the note you just wrote, half of whatever came before it. Okay? Now, and again, I've said this before, the most challenging part of this lesson is going to be how to fill in rests in measures of music where there's empty space on your exam and there's a question that says fill in the rests underneath the bracket. This is a challenging thing. I'm going to write lots of diagrams over when we get to the whiteboard, but for now I'm just going to tell you the basic rules. Here are the rules for filling in rests. When you are working with subdivisions of 2, both subdivisions can be attached in a single rest. Hooray. 3s are a little bit more difficult. When you are working with a subdivision of 3 groups, the front 2 in the group of 3 can be attached into a single rest. The entire group of 3s can be attached into a single rest. However, the back 2 subdivisions cannot be attached in a rest. Why? Because it's hard for the musician to read, and we'll look at that later. And the last one today, we're going to be looking at dealing with subdivisions of fours. Here's the rule for grouping subdivisions of fours into rests. You can group the front two of a group of four into a rest. You can group the back two of a group of four into a rest. You can group the entire thing, the entire group of four, into a rest, but you can never ever attach the middle two pulses in a group of four. You're not allowed to. You have to make separate rests for those. That sounds really complicated. Again, I will show you in a minute. Now, I'm going to teach that rest grouping concept with diagrams over on the whiteboard, and I designed it to have a visual aspect. If you are watching this and you are a more advanced student, you might not need my diagrams. All you need to know is that you are not allowed to attach groups that start on a weak beat, okay? So if you are an older student and my diagrams don't feel quite right for you, you can just remember you're never allowed to attach beats. You're never allowed to attach subdivisions where the first pulse of the subdivision starts on a weak beat emphasis within the meter. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, I will show you on the whiteboard. Let's go over there now.